It's hard to believe the Nintendo Switch is over 8 years old already. Throughout this nearly decade-long console generation, there's been plenty of highs and lows, good games, bad games, and games. With the successor of the Nintendo Switch 2 finally releasing later this year, it's fun to speculate on what the new console will deliver within its first year or so. Not to mention, it'll be fun to look back on this video years down the line, or even just after the April Direct, and laugh at just how wrong much of this ended up being. If the Nintendo Switch menus had an identity, it was the lack of one. Back during the original Nintendo Switch presentation, we were promised changeable themes like what was on the 3DS. Instead, all we got was... and nothing else. This necessarily wouldn't be a problem if the menus themselves actually looked inviting. The menus just felt so sterile and uninteresting. The Wii U, 3DS Wii, and even the DSi had much more appealing menus to them. Yes, I know this was done to save on loading times, but they couldn't have at least given us some sort of ambient background music or something? For the Switch 2, I'm hoping that they redo the menus and bring back some sort of aesthetic from the older systems. On top of that, custom themes too, because... isn't enough. Also, I love a proper activity log like that of the 3DS. Only being able to see the playtime of your most recent titles in only increments of 5 hours is pretty annoying. During the initial reveal of the Switch 2, we saw a teaser for the upcoming Mario Kart game. Not much was shown off other than the huge new desert course, as well as the introduction of 24-player races. The game also boasts a new art style, going for a more cartoonish look based on Mario Wonder and the older 90s designs, rather than the realism seen in base Mario Kart 8. I was a bit mixed seeing the direction at first. I remember watching the trailers for 8 and being absolutely blown away by how good they looked with its realistic art style. Seeing the series go in a completely new direction was definitely jarring, and not what I expected. However, while 8 still does look amazing, if you compare the two side by side, 9 definitely is a massive improvement, especially in the character expressiveness. What the main gimmick of the game will be has yet to be seen, unless all it will have going for it is the massive races, although I doubt that will be the case. After Mario Kart 8 seemingly perfected the gameplay formula, it's hard to imagine what they can introduce next. Some people have noticed a mysterious item hidden in the trailer, and speculation has gone wild as to how it will affect the gameplay. One theory is that your carts will have a limited amount of gas and that you will need to refuel at pit stops along the track, with people pointing out how the new carts shown have much more prominent gas tanks. That definitely is possible, and it makes sense with how seemingly big the new track is. You would run out of gas, but I'm not sure that'll actually make the gameplay more fun or interesting. It feels like just adding realism for the sake of realism, and if I wanted realism, I would just play a sim racing game, not Mario Kart. The other theory is that the mysterious item is actually a Wonder Flower, and every course will have a unique wonder effect to spice up the gameplay. This is certainly more interesting than having to worry about gas prices, and since the game is visually taking inspiration from Wonder, the wacky effects would fit right in. However, I'm not sure how this would actually work in-game. Would the Wonder effects be a global change that every player experiences at the same time, or would it just be the player that grabbed the flower? If the latter, how would it look to players outside of the Wonder effect? Would the different effects still manage to be as unique as a Mario Wonder, with it being a fast-paced racing game instead of a 2D platformer? And how would retro courses be impacted by it? Besides the gimmicks, there are some other aspects of the game that are complete mysteries, the most important of which is the roster. Ever since Mario Kart 8's original batch of DLC was announced back in 2014, I've constantly seen the opinion that, oh, they're running out of Mario characters, they should just turn the series into Nintendo Kart or Super Smash Kart, which I've honestly never agreed with. The idea that they're running out of Mario characters to add is completely absurd. This is a series that has had a nearly 40-year-old history. There's no shortage of characters to add. New characters could include... I find with there being small cameos or a few crossover characters here and there, like Cal was handled in Mario Kart 8, or even Rob's strange edition of Mario Kart DS, but I feel that going full Super Smash Kart would ruin the identity of the series. There are a few smaller things I'd like to see from the game too. While 24-player races seem like they'll be chaotic fun, I do hope they include an option to toggle the player count for those who might find it a bit too hectic. Coins have yet to be seen, and if they do return, I hope they play a bigger role outside of the races. In 7 and 8, collecting coins, on top of boosting your top speed, would unlock car parts at random every 100 coins or so you collect. While that is an incentive to collect coins, it felt kinda lame since you just receive them at random. Why not add a shop where you can spend your coins on the car parts you want, or even alternative costumes for some characters? I'd also like there to be some sort of single-player content like the missions in the DS or tournaments in Wii, but I honestly don't have high hopes for that returning. One of the leaked features of the Switch 2 is the inclusion of optical sensors on the Joy-Cons in order to use them like a computer mouse. There have been a lot of ideas as to what games will be made to showcase the functionality of the Joy-Con mouse. The return of SimCity, a new Mario Paint, a port or new installment of Mario Maker, or a completely original tech demo-y game in the vein of Wii Sports or 1-2 Switch. Those would all be cool, but here's a much more wild prediction. A while back, there was a rumor of a new Pikmin spin-off game that would drastically change the way the game played and looked. With the Joy-Cons featuring the mouse controls, it got me thinking, what kind of games work best with the use of a mouse? Management simulation games. So what if we combine the two together? Presenting Pikmin Zoo Tycoon. In a new effort to resolve their debt issues, Hawkitate Freight has begun importing the strange creatures of PNF 404 back home and putting them in a zoo. The game would function like a Zoo Tycoon game, except instead of lions and zebras, you're taking care of bulborbs and lollipops. With the use of the Joy-Con mouse, you'll set up enclosures that meet the needs of the different species. You could also put two different species in the same enclosure and see unique interactions not seen in the main game. Instead of handymen and zookeepers, you could have Pikmin carrying out tasks around the zoo for you. The restaurants could serve some of Louis' recipes, and the gift shop would carry the different treasures found in 2 and 4. And of course, like any good zoo simulator, you can unleash the animals on the guests. Imagine that. A water wraith steamrolling down paths of attendees. Magical. Now, is this idea likely in the slightest? No, not at all. I'm just curious as to what this mysterious Pikmin spinoff will be. For all we know, this could be another Pikmin 4 is very close to completion in 2015 situation. Speaking of Super Smash Bros. I want to say, oh, it's been too soon since the last Smash Bros, but no, it's been nearly 7 years since Ultimate came out back in 2018. Granted, the DLC lasting until 2021 definitely helps in making it feel much more recent, but I'm honestly content with waiting a bit longer for the next game to come out. In his Creating Games YouTube series, Masahiro Sakurai said that he was working on a new game, but didn't specify what exactly it would be. I'm gonna make the bold prediction and say that it's not a new Smash Bros. One of the uses for the Joy-Con mouse feature I've seen is fixing the aiming mechanic in Kid Icarus Uprising, which originally used the 3DS touchscreen and was very clunky. Since Sakurai directed Uprising, this new game could be a remake of that game, or even better, a sequel. There's also the possibility that he's working on a retro revival of another dormant series, or an original title altogether. If there's one series that absolutely thrived on the Switch, it was Xenoblade. What was once a niche JRPG series that barely even made it to the US is now one of the biggest IPs under Nintendo's belt, with each next game pushing the system onto its limits and delivering fantastic stories. With X Definitive Edition releasing later this week, every game in the series will be available on the Switch, and by extension the Switch 2 through backwards compatibility. However, there's much more to the Xeno series than just Xenoblade. There's also Xenogears and the Xenosaga trilogy. While Takahashi created the games, they're still under the ownership of Square Enix and Bandai Namco respectively and released on the PlayStations, which is why they haven't been seen on any Nintendo platforms. However, in recent years, Namco has been allowing more Xenosaga content to appear in the Xenoblade games. Cosmos, one of the main characters in Xenosaga, was featured as a rare blade in the Xenoblade Chronicles 2, and even appeared in Monolith Soft's 25th anniversary video alongside the protagonist of the Xenoblade games. The ending of Xenoblade Chronicles 3 Future Redeemed features possibly the most important radio in gaming history, featuring a Vector Industries logo, and just casually name-dropping Dmitry Yuriev, another extremely important character in Xenosaga. The new post-game story in X Definitive Edition features the Ghosts, which many have noted exhibit similar abilities to those of the Gnosis from Xenosaga, such as being able to turn people into what appears to be salt. Although, for lore reasons, this seems to be nothing more than just an Easter egg reference instead of hinting X being connected. The Radio in 3, however, as well as the shot of Earth after the credits with the light heading to it, have led to the belief that the main Xenoblade trilogy will get properly tied to Xenosaga. However, it wouldn't make sense to introduce 3 new games to the continuity if no one is able to easily play them, which is why I predict Monolith Soft's first title on the Switch 2 will be a remake or port of the Xenosaga trilogy. It would be nice to also have Xenogears included here, but it doesn't seem like Square Enix is willing to bring that game back anytime soon, unfortunately. Rhythm Heaven is one of my favorite series from Nintendo, but unfortunately it lacked any representation whatsoever on the Switch. The most it has gotten since Megamix in 2015 has been occasional cameos in the WarioWare series, since similar teams worked on both games. It is a fan favorite among Nintendo properties, and I honestly would go far as to say it played a major role in me becoming a musician. The games have been sorely missed, and the Switch 2 would be the perfect time to bring the series back. However, there is one issue with the series currently. In 2014, Sunku, the series producer and composer, was diagnosed with laryngeal cancer, and in 2015 has vocal cords removed, resulting in the loss of his ability to speak and sing. Many have assumed that this is the reason why the series has been dormant for so long. However, he still is active in music production. Fans of the series will love to see the comeback, even if Asuka has to take a backseat as a composer for the future of the series. In the Pokemon Presents 2025 showcase, Game Freak finally gave us a proper look at Pokemon Legends ZA, which, unlike the other Switch Pokemon games, actually looks like a real modern video game. However, the game is releasing for the original Switch only as far as we know, and I think it will stay that way. I do not think there will be a Switch 2 version released, like how Twilight Princess had both Wii and GameCube versions released. Game Freak has always been hesitant to shift development to new hardware. Ultra Sun and Moon released for the 3DS after the Switch release, Black and White 2 released on the DS after the 3DS release, and Emerald was released on the Game Boy Advance after the DS was released. They want to take advantage of the already massive install base the Switch 1 has. I would say it's even likely they won't bring the Gen 10 games to Switch 2, at least as an exclusive. However, in between gens, I definitely can see them releasing a new spin-off for the Switch 2. This could either be a revival of an older spin-off series or something completely different. The Pokemon Ranger series were games that could really only work with the DS's touchscreen. Sticks or gyro controls just wouldn't have worked the same. However, the Joy-Con mouse could possibly be a worthy substitute and another use of the gimmick. Metroid Prime 4 has had a very troubled development cycle, to put it lightly. It was initially teased at E3 2017 and then radio silence. In January 2019, it was announced that development on the game had restarted and shifted studios from Bandai Namco to Retro Studios, who were the developers of the first 3 Prime games. It was then complete silence again until the June 2024 Direct, where we finally got a gameplay trailer and the subtitle Beyond. Unlike Pokemon Legends ZA, I do believe they will release the game on both Switches. The Switch 2 version would feature a graphical upgrade over the original and offer the ability to use the mouse controls if desired, while the Switch 1 version will be released just to fulfill the promise of having it come out on that system as originally intended. If it ends up being a launch title too, I could see them positioning it as a graphical showcase for the new system. Look how much better it looks on the Switch 2 than your Switch 1. I would also like to see them complete the HD Prime trilogy, although I do not think that'll actually happen. The fact that there was never a second original 3D Mario released for the Switch is honestly absurd. It's been nearly 8 years since Super Mario Odyssey was released, making the longest gap between new 3D Mario titles. A new 3D Mario game is definitely in the works, and I can easily see it being the big holiday title for them this year. As for what it'll be like, it'll probably be another open world style game like Odyssey, but not a direct sequel. The time for an Odyssey 2 has long passed, and waiting this long to even reveal it would seem kind of strange. I definitely could see them introducing some of the more wacky experimental gameplay mechanics seen in Wonder 2, which would be interesting to see in a 3D environment. Splatoon 3, in my opinion, sort of ended on a just okay note. Yeah, the Grand Fest and final big runs were cool, and Side Order, which was released just a couple months before, was really fun, but it felt like the devs just wanted to get it over with and move on to the next project. It had been speculated that Side Order ran into a lot of issues in development, resulting in delays and staff that were supposed to be focusing on the multiplayer content shifting over to the DLC instead. The game ended with many stages feeling bad to play on due to a lack of proper reworks, and the baffling decision to not have any third kits for weapons. You'd think in a game that constantly uses the number 3 as a motif, it would give at least some of its weapons third kits like in the previous games, especially with there being more subs and specials than before, but that never happened. This brings me to the main change I want to see in Splatoon 4, removing the weapon kit system entirely. The whole mechanic honestly feels outdated. Many of the weapons suffered from having kits that only offered a good sub with a bad special, a bad sub with a good special, or just both being bad. A system where each weapon had a handful of subs and specials you can choose from, maybe 3 each, allowing for you to mix and match as you please, would be much better. Throughout the game's update cycle, weapons could even get updated to allow for more different weapon combinations. In general, I could definitely see them sort of soft rebooting the series and revamping many other mechanics, especially since Team Pass won the final Splatfest. One thing I do worry about, though, is depending on how they interpret the game focusing on the past, the series may lose part of its identity. The aesthetic I think of when I think of Splatoon has always been that of the 90s to 2000s Nickelodeon vibe. This felt the strongest in the first game, but it's slowly stepped away a bit, especially with how much Side Order leans into a more futuristic aesthetic. I hope that the past theming still retains this feeling, but this is honestly why I voted for Team President in the Grand Fest, even though I'm not really a fan of Off the Hook. I'm not sure how soon they will release Splatoon 4. 3 is not even 3 years old left, and with the Switch 2 being backwards compatible, its online community can still easily thrive on the new system. Not to mention, there's another game series that's gone longer without a new entry that they might be tackling first. It's hard to say exactly where the Animal Crossing series will go after New Horizons. Like with Smash Ultimate, it feels like the game just released, but no, it's been almost 5 years exactly. Granted, that's not as long as the gap between New Leaf and New Horizons, but with how insanely well the game performed, selling almost 50 million copies, they're definitely working on something. At this point, there's only one thing I can say I want for certain in the new game, and that is I want the game to actually be complete. I'm going for a while about this, and I honestly might make a video dedicated on it, but one of New Horizons' worst aspects was how it was missing series staples mechanics at launch, and that were then drip-fed through content updates over the course of the next year. When the game was done getting updated, it still lacked some important features, and many of the features that did eventually get added were done so in a way that felt tacked on. Despite all that, the game still sold 50 million copies, so it is very unclear if Nintendo will change the process for developing the next game. One of the big appeals the original Switch had, at least at first, was seeing some massive AAA games playable portably for the first time. The big one they were pushing at first was Skyrim, and later they leaned heavily to the Doom games and Dark Souls. Although today it feels like some of that magic has gone away, especially with systems like the Steam Deck and other portable PC machines being more common. We still don't know exactly how powerful the console will be, with rumors ranging from barely an upgrade to PS4 Pro levels to current-gen power. Because of this, it's hard to say which major third-party games will be even playable on the new console. Elden Ring is a few years old at this point and definitely has a chance of coming out for it. Doom: The Dark Age is another safe bet with how much Bethesda supported in the Switch 1, with possibly the Elder Scrolls 6 coming out too. Monster Hunter Wilds would be cool, but that game barely works as is on current-gen hardware, so I'm not so sure about that. GTA 6? No. Nintendo can be a very unpredictable company at times. I mean, they announced an alarm clock and a music app while everyone's expecting the Switch 2. This video will be made obsolete on April 2nd, possibly even sooner if X Definitive Edition contains any more Xenosaga connections. However, I feel that speculation videos like these serve as important time capsules. They show what fans were expecting at a given time, how opinions on certain games changed over time, and they can be funny to rewatch and see just how wrong some ideas were. For all we know, this video filled with hopes of major system sellers could be met with something like Wii Music 2.